This is Holy Trinity, Anglican Church, Vancouver. Please turn to page 934 in the Church Bibles, where you'll find Matthew chapter 2. Verse 13 begins, "When they had gone." I'd originally intended to leave that bit out, which is why in your order of service it says verse 13b. Then I changed my mind. Rectors do that sometimes, you know. Today we're commemorating the innocents. I think commemorating is a more appropriate word than celebrating under the circumstances. The prayer book has this on the 28th of December, so we're a couple of days early. But in either case, we're before Epiphany, the 6th of January, when we celebrate the visit of the wise men. So, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be looking back at verses 1 to 12. And when they had gone in verse 13 refers to the wise men. I hope you're following this so far. When they, the wise men, had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. This was not the first time this had happened. Chapter 1, verse 20. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit." And on each occasion, we get the same obedient response from Joseph. Matthew 1:24. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary as his wife. Matthew 2:14. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. I think Joseph is a perhaps overlooked hero of the faith when it comes to obedience. Taking one's wife and child to a distant land at the drop of a hat is quite something. But perhaps accepting that one's fiancée is pregnant by the Holy Spirit is good preparation in terms of unexpected occurrences. Verse 15. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." This identifies Jesus as God's son. But when the prophet Hosea had written those words, he was referring to Israel being called by the Lord out of slavery in Egypt all those generations before. In Exodus chapter 4, verses 22 and 23, the Lord told Moses, "Say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you, let my son go so he may worship me." But Israel proved to be a wayward son. At morning prayer last Thursday, Tony asked me about the words we say as part of the 90, Psalm 95. "Harden not your hearts as in the provocation, and as in the day of temptation in the wilderness." Those words refer to Israel's rebellion against God at Meribah and Massah, and it keeps on happening. Hosea says, When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But the more I called Israel, the further they went from me. But with Jesus, there is no but. Old Testament Israel rebelled against God. We rebel against God in thought and word and deed. But Jesus remains true as God's Son. He fulfills what we cannot. He is the true Israel. Verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. You know how, in the movies, the bad guy plots and schemes, but ultimately, you know, he's going to fail. He might as well have not bothered trying. Herod achieves evil. Boys in Bethlehem were killed. We can't be sure, but given the size of the population, we may be talking about 8 children. But child number 9, the one he was after, escapes him. Herod had been outwitted by the wise men. Now he's outwitted a second time. How much better if he'd never tried? The infant Jesus is not killed by Herod. Incidentally, the age of up to 2 years gives an indication of how much time had elapsed between Jesus' birth and the visit of the wise men. But while Herod the Great failed, his grandson, Herod Agrippa, was to play his part in orchestrating the death of the adult Jesus at age 33, the death of someone truly innocent. Jesus was born for a purpose. His life was preserved at this point for a purpose. His eventual sacrificial death for our sin. Oh, may we keep and ponder in our mind God's wondrous love in saving lost mankind. Trace we the babe who hath retrieved our loss from his poor manger to his bitter cross, treading his steps, assisted by his grace, till man's first heavenly state again takes place. Verses 13 to 15 and 16 to 18 present 2 contrasting responses to God, that of obedience versus that of rebellion. The obedience of Joseph, the rebellion of Herod. Yet, even if you have all the power and influence of a Herod, it's still futile to seek to go against God's will. Of course, that doesn't stop people from trying, but it's futile to try to do away with Jesus or even to try to keep him at arm's length. Rejecting Jesus always ends in tears. As Psalm 2 tells us, why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they say, and throw off their fetters. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. Then he rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will proclaim the decree of the Lord. He said to me, You are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. Amen.